Welcome to Transformed and Transformational, a TeachBeyond podcast. I'm Kian.
And I'm Heather. We're here to explore what it means to be transformed in our own lives and how that overflows to living lives of transformational impact in our communities.
Today we're going to talk to Gabriel Klein, who currently, among other things, works for communications in TeachBeyond Brazil and Gramado Theological Seminary. And it's always a lot of fun for me to talk to someone else in communications. Most of my time is spent not talking to people in that world. So connecting with someone over things like video, photography, brand management is always something really fun. It's like finding a kindred spirit.
Yeah, it's always nice to be able to, speak that common language with someone or just even having shared hobbies and similar work structure, workflow, things that they're doing day to day. You have that common ground to be able to relate with that.
Yeah, it is great. And even if you don't actually spend the whole time, talking shop with insider language, it's still fun to just be able to connect on a different level. And
hmm
for those listening, don't worry, we're not going to be talking shop this whole episode.
Right. So today we're going to be talking with Gabriel Klein, who goes by Klein, and this is part of our Working Calling series. So we're talking with Klein about his story, about how he got connected with Teach Beyond, what he does for a job, how he's seen God at work in his life over the years. I always love these conversations.
Yes, it is always encouraging to hear people's stories. Let's go over to that conversation now.
Welcome, Klein. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello there. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Klein. We are so excited to have you here and to have this conversation. As we get started, it's going to be great to just be able to kind of place you and figure out where you are and where you're sitting. So if you look out your window, describe what you see.
So I am currently in Gramado, which is a town in the south of Brazil, and I live at the headquarters of TeachBeyond Brazil. If I look out my window right now, I can see some trees, and two of them are very big araucarias, which are type of pine trees that we have here. It's kind of a symbol of this region, and it's also in the logo of our camp ministry, this tree, because we have lots of them here, and I can see two from my window. And I can also see a part of the city. We are situated in a higher part of town here, so the view from where we are is pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. And Gramado is known for its quintessential, the shops and the houses looking like that German architecture, would you say? Is that right?
Yes, it's very, very what it looks like. But yeah, Gramado is an amazing place to live. When I was a kid, I am from another part of this state, from Rio Grande do Sul, and I used to come here with my parents from, like, I don't know,
Mm,
holidays or vacation to
right.
visit, because it's a very, very beautiful town indeed.
A tourist destination, and now you get to live there and do
Yeah,
ministry there. That's great.
yeah.
Well, maybe you can fill us in a little bit on what you do with Teach Beyond Brazil now. What does day to day look like? What's your role?
So I am currently head of communications from the Gramado Theological Seminary, or STG as we call it here, Brazilian version of the name. But I also have some leadership roles, not only this communication part. Every day is a little bit different, so it may be a little bit confusing to understand.
Well, we say like variety is the spice of life, right? So having a little bit of everything is fun.
Exactly. But basically, like in this communication part that I said, I'm responsible for all, like, the social media strategy, leading the team of volunteers, like updating websites, planning our campaigns, shooting photo and video, which is something that I love doing. But like all the brand management from the seminar, uh, it's something that it's my responsibility. And in this part of the leadership roles that we share, that I share with the rest of the missionaries that work at the seminar, we have different responsibilities during the week. So, for example, we have dinner with the students once a week. So we cook for them, we talk to them. Um, I'm responsible for one of the devotionals that we have every morning. Um, Once a year, I also teach a class for the first year students, which is actually coming in a few weeks. I have to teach a class in ecclesiology and eschatology. It's a very different parts, but also very nice to have this experience. And with all the other missionaries that work here in other ministries, because this is something that we have here at the headquarters, right? I work at the seminary, but there are other ministries happening here too. We work at the guest house that we have here, which is a way that we have to fundraise to support the ministries that happen here. So once a month, basically, we work with this, receiving guests, receiving like groups or churches coming for 2 or 3 days retreats. So yeah, that's a lot, and that's why it's a little bit hard to explain what is the day
Yeah.
to day like. You know.
Right, right. And having all those different roles, I'm sure, gives you different perspective. Being in the classroom sometimes with the seminary students reminds you of what the seminary is doing, and I'm sure that plays into then your brand management, your work
Mhm.
on the communication side, and then as you're seeing people come as guests and interacting with different people, I don't know, for me, when I have to, talk about what's happening at that center to guests, it kind of solidifies, it reminds you, oh, yeah, there is a lot going on here as I'm talking about it. And so I can imagine all those roles have interesting points of intersection that are helping to give you the perspective that you have when you're doing maybe that main communications role. It's all kind of coming together there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've grown up coming here for summer camps. So
Mm,
my first contact happened with only camps, but right now working, like you said, in different areas with different responsibilities. It's nice to see from a different perspective everything
yeah,
that is happening,
yeah.
and yeah, it helps a lot. Like I also studied at the seminar, so being back here,
Mm,
working, being at the classroom, being guiding the students in devotional time or at dinners, it's very nice to see what God is doing in their lives. Helps a lot to decide how we are going to share what's happening here in social media or planning
mhm.
campaigns and all of
Mhm.
this.
Mhm. Yeah. So it sounds like that you've had points of connection throughout your life as a kid, coming to camps, then coming to the seminary. And then did you just stay on after being at the seminary, or did you actually come back again having done something else first?
Yeah, I came back like
Okay.
last year, right? So basically, I started coming here when I was 11, so like quite a few years ago,
Yeah, a while ago.
or yeah, a while ago. From for summer camp, some people from my church used it to come here. They told me about it, and I decided to give it a try. And after I first came, it was what I did every summer. So started at 11 and until I was 16, every summer I was here meeting with friends and having this time with camp. And it was a lot connected with my story with God. Like I was born and raised in a Christian family, but when I was 11 to 12 was a moment that I was starting to understand my faith a little bit better, to know
Mm,
God a little bit better. And so it was around that time that I decided to surrender my life to God. And it was basically at the same time that I was also coming for camps and having this experience here that brought me closer to God during that time. And then during this time coming to camp, I heard about the seminar. In that time, there was not a seminar like today. It was only like a gap year, a Christian gap year. And I heard about like camp volunteers talking about it. A lot of the counselors that I had, they took this gap year program and they would talk about it, and it stuck to my head like, oh, this is something nice to do after high school. And
mhm,
that's what happened. I finished high school in 2016, and then in 17 I came here. But I came here for this gap year. When I arrived, there was already the graduation program, like the theology
mm,
degree happening, but I didn't came here for that. My plan was to
mhm,
stay in this gap year program and then come back to my city
mhm.
and to my hometown and study music. That was what I
Hmm.
wanted to do. I wanted to become like a music teacher or something like that. But God's plan was a little bit different. And while I was in here, I felt like this calling that I should stay a little bit more. I didn't understand at the time why, like because a lot of people that come for the graduation program, they do that because they want to be like pastors, they want to be full-time ministers,
Yeah.
and I didn't have that with me. I just felt that there was something going on that God wanted to work in my life, and then I decided to stay. It felt like the right thing to do. So I stayed here and completed the graduation. But when I finished my studies in here, I took an internship period, like for the theology course, in a church and a missionary project also in France, in Lyon, in France. So I was there. It was a contact that I had through my church. I participate in the Lutheran church here in Brazil, and they had this like contact for an exchange program. And so I actually finished my studies with this internship in there. When I
Mhm.
came back, was during pandemic, so I went back to my hometown, to my parents' home in Novo Hamburgo, which is like one and a half hour from Gramado. And then I stayed there during pandemic. I got a job in there with video production, which was something that I first got in contact with here with camps and during this gap year. So I started working in there. After I changed it, I started working in an English school in there. And then it was only 2 years later, in 2022, that Edinardo, which is like the coordinator of the seminar, he I think he went like to my church in Novo Hamburgo to preach, and then he stayed the weekend in there, and we talked, and we talked about TeachBeyond, we talked about the seminar, and it was during a time of my life that I was really thinking about TeachBeyond. Uh, with these experiences that I had working with education in this English school, and also with video before in this video production company, I knew that there was something with that I wanted to do for like the mission for God, and looking to teach beyond ministries, looking to like the mission, the vision, the values. It was something that got me very interested in. And then when Eginardo invited me to come, it was like it looked like the natural thing to do next.
I love that you mentioned how you wanted to do music at first and you have this passion for video and photography. But in the middle of that, you went to seminary and you did an internship in France. Did you kind of give up those parts of your life, or was that integrated into the time in seminary and the time overseas?
That's a very, very good question, actually. The music part was something that I think it was kind of a like teenage dream, like playing a band and make music for life. But in the end, I understood that it was what I wanted to do at church. It didn't need to be my profession, but it's the way that I wanted to serve at church. So yeah, this is my favorite ministry at church, music ministry, and it was connected to my time here at the seminary because like my final paper I wrote on like praise and worship and music at church.
Mhm.
And during the whole time studying here, like every time that I got the chance to do research papers or other things, it was connected to that. Like so, I was
Mhm. Mhm.
studying more about that. And during the time here, I understood that even if I didn't work with that, it would be good to study more to serve at church better.
Mhm.
But the other parts, like the seminar and the exchange, they were a little connected because I was trying at the time. I was still trying to understand what like the future would look like. So working at this church and in this like missionary program at the exchange was a little bit of that. Like I had a lot of different things to do in there, so I could test and see what areas I liked to work with, what areas I didn't like or didn't feel called to. So basically,
Mhm. Mhm.
that's it.
I love how the Lord has maybe brought forward different elements of who you are in different seasons, but then those that maybe aren't the primary role or your job title are still there, and recognizing that music, for example, is a way to serve the church, and that's not less important than if you became a, famous musician traveling around the world, right? The Lord is using that in this season in that certain way. And there are just seasons where certain talents, skills, trainings may seem to be a little more dormant, but they're still there and they're still part of who we are. And I just love that in ministry, there are often many ways we can use our skills, even if they're not our maybe job title, if you will. So that's neat to hear that in your story.
Yeah, and it's very nice, like right now, to look back on that and see everything that
Hmm.
God has done through all these experiences. Because if I talk about like my, I don't know, my professional background, it can be very strange to some people, right? Because like I worked at a video production company, I worked at a church for this internship, I worked as a teacher in an English school, and then right now I work at a theology seminary with communications, right? So looks like I had four completely different
Uh-huh.
jobs, but it's very nice for me to see right now that like I can see that God was guiding me to something. And it was
Mm.
very clear for me, for example, when the invitation to come work here at the seminar arrived for me, because I was thinking about photo and video, and I knew that I wanted to work somehow with education. And I had a degree in theology, so three different, completely different things. And I could not think about like, okay, what's the job that I can have with these things, And then
All three of
when,
them.
yeah,
Yeah.
all three of them. And then when the invitation came, I said, looks like God created a role that I can, use all
Yeah.
of this. So that was very
Yeah.
nice. And for me, it was very special because since I left high school, I always had trouble thinking about future, because in my head, like the next decision was something that I needed to have like all my life figured out,
Mhm.
like, so
Mhm.
okay, what's the job that I want to have for the rest of my life, or what's the
Right.
like course that I'm going to take, so I will study that and work with that. So it was very nice to see how God let me rest on these decisions,
Mm.
making me remember that He is using every experience to teach me and to make me into what He wants,
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking about those big changes, like, when you decided to do the graduation program at the seminary, or when you decided to return to the seminary, or, these kind of points where you were shifting from one job to the next or one opportunity to the next. What were the reactions from people in your life, or kind of what were some of the maybe barriers even that you were thinking of needing to work through as you were making those decisions?
Yeah, so most of them actually, they made a lot of sense for people close to me, so
Okay.
that was nice.
Yeah.
um, I think maybe the staying in the graduation was the one that took a little bit longer to understand, even for me, because I didn't fully understand why I was
Right.
doing that. I just felt like God was talking to me about
Uh-huh.
something. So, like, I didn't understand, so it was hard to explain to other people why I was doing that. But the rest of it, like the video production company job, was something that came naturally, because it was something that I started doing here as a volunteer with camps and with the seminar. And then it was nice to see like a job opportunity coming from something that I learned to do volunteering at camps and working and studying at the seminar. But I was like having a not very good moment after some months in this company, and I was thinking about changing jobs, but I didn't know like where to go. I was not like actively searching for a new job. I was just thinking about it, and I was also thinking about the education part, because I had this thing with education, thinking about if God had something to do with me in this area, because when I stopped to think, it was something that I would like
Mhm.
to work with, but I didn't know exactly how. And then in this same period that I was thinking about leaving my job, I got a job offer from an English school, and I like I had studied there before. I knew some of the people that worked in there. It was a very nice environment, and I said, okay. So I was thinking about education, and now I have this
Here it
opportunity.
is.
So I
Right.
went there, and the same thing happened from the English school to here to the seminar. I remember talking to my parents, and they were a little bit worried with this like fundraise with missionary and work and this stuff, but their reaction was like, we knew that was going to happen at some point of your life, so yeah, we know that you're gonna be happy and that you're doing something that God is calling you to do. So
Mhm.
that word was very natural for them as well. And for my church in Novo Hamburgo too, when I talked to my leaders about coming here, they were a little bit frustrated because they liked to work with me in there, but they also said like, yeah, I think we knew that was going to happen at some point, so it was nice like confirmation to have.
Absolutely.
For our weekly spotlight, we are focusing on camps. Klein mentioned what a big impact camps had in his own growing up years, and camps continue to have impact today. TeachBeyond runs a variety of camps, including English camps, all around the globe. If you would like to find out more about how you or a whole team can serve, visit teachbeyond.org/go.
And now back to the conversation with Klein.
You mentioned how much you enjoy doing the photography and the videos. What is it about those things that give you joy? What do you enjoy about those projects?
It all started with the seminar and with summer camps. Like they needed someone to edit a video at the seminar when I was in my first year, and then I said, okay, I think I know how to
Mhm.
use like this software. And then I edited, I think it was like a missionary trip video, like a highlight video.
Okay.
And because of that, when I was going to be part of the staff of the camp, they said, okay, so you know how to edit videos, you're gonna edit camp videos now. And that was very nice because I had a lot of my story connected to camps, and it
Mm,
was nice to be recording that which was happening in other people's lives,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
to be able to register those moments and share them and watch, because we have this like, it's not the same day edit, but it's the same week edit, so we film during the week, and in the end, the last day, we need to show the video.
Hmm.
And we see all of like the kids watching the video and uh,
Yeah.
thinking about what they had lived in that week.
Yes.
So that was a very special feeling, and I think that's maybe one of the things that I like the most, like to be able to capture these moments that I know that are important, that are part of something that God is doing in their lives, and so they can have this memory. They can remember what happened on that week. They can remember um, what they heard, what they learned, what God did in their lives. And this is something that I have until today. Like one of my favorite videos to type of videos to make is like this
Mm.
highlight video. So we do that here at the seminar as well. So we have a missionary trip, and I record. We share what's happening here. So this is something very nice. And more recently, I've been working in some like kind of the Teach Beyond stories of transformation videos.
Mhm.
So with the camp and also with the seminar, I've been able to record some stories, like people talking about how the camp has impacted their lives, how God has worked in their lives through camp, and mainly right now at the seminar. So this is actually something that I'm working on right now. We are opening the next year inscriptions for the seminar. So we're with this campaign going on, and one of the main parts of the campaign is to have the students' stories recorded so that we can share and we can tell other people what God is doing in their lives. Because we understood that for me, coming here as a student, and for lots of students, what impacts them the most is listening to other students talking about what happened, talking about how God changed them, how God worked in their lives. So right now I have the chance to be the one listening to these stories and like recording them and editing and sharing them. So and also I can do that as part of the staff, so I'm not just like meeting people that I don't know and hearing their stories. I am like living with them the whole year,
Sure. Yeah.
going with missionary trips together, having like classes, having devotionals, having meals together, and then listening to their stories. So this is pretty amazing.
Being able to hear people's stories when they share them, for some reason, some people become much more vulnerable when they're sharing their story when you're asking them versus in a casual conversation walking down the hallway. Yeah, that's just a great thing, a great gift to be able to hear their stories and share their stories with others. You mentioned you enjoy the films, the highlight reels, the recaps of camps and other things. It's such an interesting summary kind of event of you take an entire week of activities, lots of things happen and kind of condense it into I don't know how long your videos are, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, quick action of what's happening. And even right now, as we're hearing your story from your life, we're only getting quick kind of bits and pieces of it and kind of a highlight reel of that. And how was that lens of editing videos, of kind of recapping events, how has that affected your understanding of like the work of Teach Beyond or how you see God at work around you?
Yeah, it can be quite a challenge. In these stories, like I was recording students, and most of the interviews took like more than 10 minutes. And now I have the challenge to make them into 1 minute, 1.5 minute
Right.
short
Right.
videos. So it's very nice to listen and to try and capture the most important moments, but also listening to the stories give me this helps me like creating this like bird's eye view from the seminar, from the like this the local organization here, and for also for teach beyond as a whole, because sometimes I see what's happening in their lives, for example, of the students, but when they share their stories, they're talking about something that I like hadn't noticed or
Yeah.
hadn't paid attention or didn't think it was so important. It's nice to see that God works differently with different people in different like ways, in different rhythms, different times. And being able to be here right now at a place in which we don't have only one ministry happening, but lots of ministries, lots of people coming and going, lots of missionaries that come to work for different reasons, helps me like create this sense of community, I would say, and also to be reminded that what God is doing is a lot bigger than what I can
Mm.
see
Yeah.
and what I can put in a 2 minute video as well.
Right.
So I'm very like grateful to have these experiences, and I think it also helped me understand, like you asked in your question about Teach Beyond as a whole, as the organization, because we have here lots of informal education projects. Like the Seminary is the only one that is formal education that we
Hmm.
have here, but we have lots of different projects, and it's very clear to see that God uses different things to transform people's lives. And for us here, it's nice to see that God uses our gifts, no matter how different they are, because we don't have only teachers, we have like lots of different people working in different areas that are connected to education,
Right.
right? But not only in one or two ways, but like lots of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting how when you make a camp video, I'm sure you're highlighting the really big action, big activities. And even as you describe being with someone, walking down the halls with them, talking with them, the big changes are probably happening under the surface and what God is doing. And you can't really capture that in a video. And yet those are the bigger things in some ways. In a lot of ways, they're the bigger things. Kind of navigating what makes it the video and then the stories where people can actually share these deeper
Hmm.
movements that God is causing in their lives is really powerful.
Yes, and we had this missionary trip a few weeks ago. That is one also of my favorite moments of working with the seminar. We get to do this missionary trips with the students. And during the trip, one of the things that I had to do was to record, to capture, to share what was happening. And then one of the students came to talk to me and said, like, it's so nice because they normally run away from me when I have my camera on hands, right? But then she said it's so nice to have that because like in a few weeks or in a few years we will think about this trip and we will have something to look at to remember. You know, we
Mhm,
have the
mhm.
pictures that we can send to our families, to our supporters, to our church, but we also have this memories, you know, to be reminded of what happened here and what God is doing here. So that was very nice to hear, and I think it things like that just like help me remember why I'm doing these things, you know.
Definitely. Well, you're talking about sharing other people's stories of how they've been impacted, how they've been changed, and I imagine that you have your own stories too of how you've been impacted and the transformation you've seen in your life. And as you said, we could, talk for hours even just about that. But along those lines, what would you say is a specific way that you have seen God transforming you through your time with Teach Beyond Brazil? Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think when I look back with all of this like big changes in my life, one of the things that I'm sure God taught me is to trust Him and to rest in Him, knowing that I don't need to have this huge like crisis every time I need to make a decision because He's taking care of. He's like caring, and I don't know. I have this feeling that he has been guiding me so far with all these crazy different things happening, and I just know that he will continue to do that. You know, so to rest in him and to trust him and remember that my future is in his hands was
Mm,
one of the biggest things that is more connected like to all these changes and how he brought me here, right? So
mm,
uh, being here, one thing that I was thinking about is something that we talk a lot about at the seminar because we have these three areas that we talk a lot about that are a very important part of our process with the students, which is like to we talk about to be, to know, and to do. Because sometimes when people like go to university or they're going to study somewhere, they're normally thinking about the part of to know, you know, like about
mm,
getting knowledge. And for us it's very important that we are not just forming knowledge, we are forming like character, knowledge, and also like skills and competencies to
mm,
serve God. So these three things are very important and help us see ourselves as one um, whole person, you know, not like separate in different areas. And for me
mhm,
personally, it was very important to think about that working here because I am in a role that I can use a lot of different things that I learned how to do during these last few years. But it's very easy to think about what I have to do in here only as a matter of skill or competences or things to do, you know? So,
mhm,
okay, so I need to do this, I need to do that, and I know how to do this. But God has reminded me um, many times in here that it's not only about what I do. And first of all, it's not about what I do, but about being uh, someone that loves Him and growing in my relationship with Him. And remember that He is doing it and not me. Like it's His job, it's His ministry, it's His story after all.
mm.
And I'm just like a part of it, and I'm very glad that I'm part of it. But it always also makes it easier, you know, to remember that it's not about the things that I have to do only. Like I get to do these things, but the most important thing is to be with Him and to do it with Him, not only like for Him. Or one thing that I think one of the students said, we have every semester we have some like bigger presentations, so the students can preach or talk about something different. And I'm not exactly sure what the exact quote was, but it went something like, "We should not only talk about him. We need first of all to talk with him, and then we can do that about him and for him." So, yeah. So remember. remembering all of that is very important, and I think it was one of the most important things that God taught me and reminded me of during this time in here.
You went through so many different periods of transition and change and unsure of what's next. And even as you're talking about the things that you've learned, I'm wondering if there's something that you wish if you could go back and tell your past self, your younger self, maybe one of these changes, the moment of changes, or even before that. Is there something you wish you could tell your past self to with the perspective that you have now?
Yeah, I think it would be like one of the first things that I mentioned in the previous
Mm,
questions. So, because I think about myself when I was like 17 or 18, or going through this first decisions, like should I go to this gap year, or afterwards should I stay and study a little bit more in here. And I remember going through like full life crisis because of these questions, like I need to decide what to do for the rest of my life, and I have no idea what is this thing that I need to do for the rest of my life. I'm not sure what is God's plan. I'm not sure what's my calling, but I think I was looking at that, my calling, and at my future, at something that was like a mystery that I needed to try
Mhm.
and solve,
Mhm.
so that I could understand what was God's will for my life.
Mhm.
Right now, I can see that He has been guiding me all the way through here, through all these
Mhm.
transitions, through all
Mhm.
these different jobs and different experiences. And I just know that if I do what He has already told me, like in the scriptures, which is not so hard to find, it's not a mystery to solve, it's just like to grow in a relationship with Him, with
Right.
His Word. If I do that, I know that uh, He will be guiding me through the next step and the next one and the next one.
Yes.
And I can just like rest assured that He's taking care of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what's interesting, Klein, is that we have these conversations somewhere in the middle of the story, right? And so thinking about discernment and asking the Lord for direction for what's next, it's poignant at different parts in our lives and recognizing that, like you said, it's not like, oh, now you know what you're doing for the rest of your life. There's an element of knowing you want to keep pursuing Him, but knowing exactly what that looks like is a continual opportunity to be looking to the Lord, right? So, we'd love to hear, whether it's at this moment or, in your life, what does it look like for you to be looking to the Lord for direction, for discernment, for what's next when you're at that crossroad point? Yeah, what does that look like for you to be prayerfully considering what God has next for you?
I would say that getting to know Him more and more, and growing in my relationship with Him and loving Him more, it's what I should do first, always. And of course, right now, with all these experiences, I can understand a little bit better things that I like to do, things that He has taught me to do, experiences that He guided me through. And I can say that I know a little bit better about things that I would like to do to serve Him. So, like, I have this part of experiences that help me understand that, but I think that being able to rest and not worry too much, knowing that He will guide me to the next step, and that having this decision for the next step doesn't need to be the decision for the rest of my life. Maybe it will be, only He knows. But resting on that, it's what helps me. And I am actually like in this moment thinking about some changes, and it's nice once more to be able to look at His story in my life and see the opportunities that I have, and try to connect the opportunities with His story, with what He has already taught me, and that helps a lot. That helps a lot. This part of like calling and understanding God's will for making decisions was something that, like I said before, as a teenager, and even a while after, was quite of a problem for me. But right now, working at the seminary, I get the chance to talk about that with some students, and like sometimes going to churches and youth groups to talk about the seminary and also talk about this, about God's calling. It's nice to tell them my story and say that like uh, God has already showed some stuff in your life, things that you like to do, things that you can use from your life to serve Him better. So sometimes just try to look at God has already done, helps us take the next step, and I don't know, wait for what He's gonna do next.
It's such a good reminder, knowing that we're still going through changes, still learning things. God is still shaping us and directing us. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Klein. But before let's go, we ask one thing that's part of this story of changes, and that's what's one thing that's changing your life right now. So this can be something big, some of those life changing decisions, or just something really small, but making a difference in your life right now.
I know mine is small this week, so, I don't know
No
about you,
pressure.
Kian, but
Yes. So I'll go first. You have a little bit of time to think about it, Klein. But the thing that's changing my life this week and right now is me and my kids have started playing street soccer. We got our street just got repaved by the city, and we live in a little cul-de-sac. So we've been out there playing a lot of soccer recently, and that has been a
Ah,
great joy to me that they want to go out there and play. So it's been very fun.
I'm waiting for Klein to correct you that it's actually football, but we'll let that
Yes.
Nah, I don't mind. I don't mind.
go.
But
Uh,
it is a very very Brazilian change. So yeah, I'm proud of you.
yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
That's great. What's changing my life? It's funny enough, we're in fall now here, and it's springtime where you are, Klein. But what's changing my life right now is the late blooms of my dahlias, which is a type of flower that I have just started growing this year, and they're pretty, like, delicate flowers, and I just thought I had done something wrong and they just were never going to bloom. I really did. And then just a few weeks ago, it's definitely fall, they started blooming and they're just absolutely beautiful. I keep sharing the photos with people because I'm just completely enraptured by the beauty of these dahlias. So it's been really neat. There's obviously spiritual lessons in that of like the Lord's timing and how he brings things, to bloom in his timing. But also just enjoying the beauty of that and realizing I didn't do anything wrong. I just need to be patient. There's another sermon there too. But that's what's changing my life lately. What about you, Klein?
I'll talk about something that it's kind of changing, but it's a change that I'm trying to implement. I've just
Okay.
like
Yeah.
finished listening to this audiobook on Audible that is called "The Common Rule: Habits
Uh-huh.
of Purpose for an Age of Distraction" by Justin Early. I don't know if you have read or.
I think this was changing Kian's life in the past. So
Okay,
Yeah. It's a great
nice,
book.
nice. Yeah, so I've just listened to it, and it was very special and important. I love thinking about and talking about and like studying about habits and how we are formed into by the practice that we have, by the liturgies, we could say, like thinking
Mhm.
about like church and thinking about our spiritual life. And then I just listened to this book, and I'm trying to implement some of the habits that it talks about. Right now, I'm trying to implement some of the daily habits, right? Because you have
Mm.
for daily and for weekly habits. Right now, I am working on the three first daily habits that are three times kneeling prayer, scripture before phone, the idea of like having a time with the scripture before I reach to my phone, and one meal with others. This one is normally easy for me in here because we are used to having our lunch together here at the mission with the students, with the missionaries. So at the headquarters, this part is a little bit easier. But yeah, I'm working on this two first as well, and then the next one is the 1 hour fun off. And
Mm.
after that, I'll try to implement the weekly habits,
Nice.
like step by step.
Mm. I think habits like that will be a lifelong, forever exploration because different seasons of life and different communities and, different people and yeah, all of that brings about different ways that even the same routine looks, let alone introducing new routines. So that's great to hear how that's impacting your life right now, Klein.
Yeah, it's very nice. And like I said before in the one of the first questions. Like our day-to-day routine here is very like crazy. It can change a lot according to what is happening, according to what we have to
Sure.
do. So having some of these things a little bit more structured, it also helps a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, thank you so much for sharing about Story God's Writing and what he's doing in and through you, and for sharing your perspective on how he's been at work. So we're glad to have had the chance to talk with you today.
Thanks. I was very glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me, and it was very good to talk to you both.
Kian Klein and I all serve with an organization called TeachBeyond. As you have heard, education plays a big role in missions, and TeachBeyond is a part of that.
As followers of Jesus, TeachBeyond is a global community, providing transformational education services as part of God's ongoing mission to transform individuals and communities into all he intends.
Want to learn more and get involved? Visit teachbeyond.org or follow us on social media. You can also see the Instagram account that Klein mentioned at STGramado, GRAMADO.
To help more people find the podcast and hear about Teach Beyond, we'd love it if you would leave a rating or review and share the show with a friend. Be sure you're subscribed or following the show on the platform you listen so you never miss an episode.
And as always, you can reach us at podcast@teachbeyond.org. We'll see you next week.